Welcome to Sleeping with Sarah. I'm Sarah Albritton, and I'm here with my guest, Ian Abramson.
Hello! I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks. I'm excited to have you. How'd you sleep last night, Ian?
Oh, man. I slept horribly, but a way that I enjoy. Horribly, it'll sound horrible, but I have come to love it, you know?
Yeah.
I have accepted that my sleep schedule is erratic.
Yeah. How so? Is it just like, do you write in the middle of the night? Like, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, when I am just freelancing like I am, I can keep whatever hours I do, and so my body kind of pushes it to, go to sleep at 6 a.m., and then like wake up when I wake up. Some days I'll get 4 hours, some days I'll get 12 hours, if it's been a few days of 4 hours,
Got it.
But what's fun is that when I go to sleep, I truly have no idea when I'll wake up, right? I get to feel like a Rip Van Winkle,
So you don't do alarms at all?
Buddy, I do so many alarms.
Oh, you sleep through them.
If I have to, for this, I set 4 alarms.
Oh, wow.
Because I might sleep through one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I make sure that I keep my phone far enough away that if I want to turn it off, I have to physically get out of bed and
Yeah, I like that.
Those are the fail safes.
I've seen that they have an alarm clock where it rolls away from you. It's supposed to roll off the...
that's so fun!
It's supposed to roll off It's supposed to roll off like the nightstand. It'll roll away from you, and you have to come catch it. And I've seen other ones that are like puzzles, like a bunch of things pop out, and you have to put it together.
Oh, that's fun!
I've seen a bunch of these. I haven't tried them out yet, but the idea is that you have to use your brain to put it together, so you have to wake up essentially.
Oh man!
But at the same time, it's like if you're someone who gets a lot of anxiety, it's like. All right, putting these puzzles together. How am I going to do it? It's like that could be a lot for certain people, I think.
For sure. You have had your own interesting relationship with sleep, right?
Yes, I have.
How did that journey begin? How did you start realizing, okay, I'm going to have a different experience with sleep than others?
I think you what you think is your normal until you think what you're doing is normal until you realize other people have other issues, right?
Right.
I didn't realize how bad it was, and it started probably when I was 13 or 14, but you don't realize how bad it is. My parents were just noticing because I was always pretty good in school and pretty outgoing, pretty active, and I was still doing stuff. It's just I was so tired, and I would just conk out during class, before class, on the way to school, after home. Thankfully, like I said, I was a smart kid, and even when I was sleeping in class, I could hear everything that was going on, so I could I didn't fail or anything, you know. But my parents just kept taking me to doctors, and doctors misdiagnose it a lot of the time, and so especially pediatricians, you have to go. You can get diagnosed for the right thing, you just have to go to the right doctor. So it wasn't until I fell down in a class, and one of my doctors, I had a cataplexy, which is where you fall down, and it looked like I fainted. And my teacher, who was it was her first year at the time, and she was super nervous. She's like, "Oh my God!" It was right before the midterm, before spring break, and she's like, we're calling your parents. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine." And then they call my parents. My parents are like, "Well, maybe we should see a neurologist." And thankfully, I saw a neurologist who was a family friend, so they believed me. I think that is very important. I am very lucky because I was diagnosed by a family friend, so they believed everything I said. I know a lot of people have issues getting diagnosed with something because people are like, are you sure you're not exaggerating? Are you sure you really feel this tired? The only reason I got diagnosed as quickly as I did was because I had a doctor that was very good and also believed me. And then we did a sleep study, and then this is what you have, and it was a little bit of a relief because once you figure out what you got, you can take medicine for it.
Yeah. And so you've been able to then manage it since then. Yeah.
I mean, it's been a lot of ups and downs because a lot of changing medications and things like that. But I'm super lucky because a lot of parents, after getting a diagnosis like that, might limit their kid for doing things, might not let me go to school 6 hours away or things like that, or try to prevent me from you know, other normal things like driving and things like that. But they were very good about, hey, we're going to let you be you, you know, and let you, you know, I put my own personal limitations on myself driving. There's a caveat, you know.
Sure.
But
yeah.
like I don't drive more than like 40 minutes by myself. But it's also just they gave me the autonomy and the confidence to be able to like go to college far away.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you are capable of managing what that is. You are capable of saying 40 minutes is where I know I'm safe, and that's where I feel good, and you manage that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think my body also knows, because there have been times where Chicago, like circling, trying to find a spot, and then I finally find a spot near my apartment, and then I'd park, and then sometimes I would just like fall asleep right after I parked.
Whoa, yeah.
Definitely got a couple knocks on the window from police officers at one point, and I was like, sorry, I was just taking a nap.
What did they say to that?
Usually they're fine when they just like, I don't know.
Were they looking for people napping in their car? How did they?
I don't know. No,
you?
it's happened a couple different times. If I fall asleep and like sometimes I have to take a quick nap, and like people, it's happened in LA too. I think they're just. I don't know why. They just want to disturb my nap. I mean,
you're alive.
I guess so. But usually when I'm done, I'm just like super friendly and like just try to be like, I'm so sorry.
For sure.
Had a long day, needed a nap.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'll get out of the way, whatever. I do the whole like smile and like, you know, just be super polite kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I get that there's a level of privilege that I have that allows me to do that. But, you know.
I mean, listen, I don't think... we're talking about making sure that you're waking up suddenly and dealing with an authority figure and having to be like, okay, I want them to know that I'm safe. I'm going to smile. I'm going to be nice. I get that, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, thankfully, I haven't woken up and like screamed or anything. Because I
mean, that would be so wild.
Well, I've done it many times regularly, but never in the car.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
Yeah. Oh no, I've woken up screaming. I terrified my college dorm mate. Pretty sure traumatized her. Like in the middle of the night, apparently. In the middle of the night, I jetted up. Apparently my eyes were open, and I looked at her. And I just said, "Who's the man in the corner?" And then I immediately went back to sleep.
Whoa! And you don't have a memory of that?
I remember bits of it.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
It's very straight. But like. Definitely, that was freshman year. Definitely, she did not want to renew being a dorm mate with me the next year. That was probably one out of like 20 times it happened. She finally said something.
So you're waking up and you're screaming. What if I scream when I'm waking up? It's coming out of a nightmare. Is it like terrors that you're having? Is it just suddenly coming into consciousness and that is a scary?
It can happen both ways.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Yeah. So it can happen both ways. I think sometimes I have dreams. So I go to REM. Like I can fall asleep right now and I can go straight to REM.
Yeah.
Most people take like 90 minutes to get to REM, and I can be in REM, which is the dream state, for the majority of my sleep, or more than most people.
Yeah.
And so I have really weird dreams, and I could have dreams that really mess with my time sense and awareness, right? So it's like I could have dreams that last for days, or I've had some heartbreaking dreams where it's like it went spans over decades, and I had like felt like months, and I woke up and I was very sad because the people I had relationships with, it felt very real, and it took a moment to realize, that's not a reality. That person that I loved doesn't exist, and that was very heartbreaking.
How do you deal with something like that? Do you ever, man, I miss Dave, you know, like.
Well, the thing is that the longer that I was awake, the further the dream life kind of the further away you are from the dream life is kind of how I refer to it, I guess.
Yeah. So it's like a moment, but after a few minutes, you're like, right.
Well, for the longer ones, it might be like a couple hours where it's more like, okay, this is like, you know. And I try to write what I can remember, because some of my dreams are very cinematic.
Ooh, that's cool.
What about you? What kind of dreams do you have? Are you?
Man, when I'm in these bizarre sleep schedules where it's like I might be on 2 hours of sleep and I might be fully rested, and right now I'm somewhere in between. I don't tend to dream. I tend to get to a point with insomnia, though, that I just desperately want to go to bed, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll try laying there for several hours, really committed to, like, lights off, sleep mask, you know? White noise. Let's turn off the white noise. You know, like you do, like you trying tweaking whatever I can to be like, let me just lay here. Do not move. Just breathe, meditate. And I can't.
Yeah.
It's awful. So then you play a game where you're like, okay, let me get up and I'll put on something that I'll fall asleep to, you know? And then you just instantly can't help but notice new details in the episode of The Office that you've seen a million times. You're just like, does Michael always wear a ring? You know?
Or would this episode work today?
Yeah.
How many people would it offend at this point?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
No, I can't imagine that. Like, I think for me, it's like I am somebody who's nervous about going to a yoga class because at the end when they just have you like lay down like still for a minute, I always fall asleep. So like,
oh, that makes sense.
So I bet it's not that I don't like yoga.
Yeah.
Although, like, I will say, like, hot yoga, that's horrible. Don't do that.
I have not done hot yoga. I would try it so that I could say what you just said.
Yeah. My sister teaches it, and I did do a class or two, but it is very hard to breathe.
Wow.
It is very hot and humid.
Yeah.
And it's good for, I guess, if you want to sweat a lot of stuff off, but, like...
You'd still get to sleep in that environment? Yes. Wow.
I mean, I think I can sleep just about anywhere. And
there is a version of it that's like a cool superpower when you're talking about it.
Yeah, know? There is.
For someone who can't sleep, and I understand we're talking about a medical condition, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but also it's like, man, I'm jealous. You're saying like you can get to REM instantly. I know what that means.
Yeah.
I know what getting 20 minutes of sleep and waking up and being like, I gotta start over again.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is because I'm in REM, I'm not really getting the restful sleep. So I have to take medicine at night to try to trick my brain into that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do.
Because so REM is a very active part of the sleep cycle. So
then my whole body is like exhausted. So it's like trying to teach it to wake up. And then I take pills to stay awake and all this stuff. So it's like, it's a lot, but I'm very manageable now. But if I've been diagnosed,
but it's something you have to manage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, insomnia, I bet you have to manage too in ways as well.
Yeah.
Like,
they're different. I feel silly. They're not. I can't even compare my insomnia to. Well, I feel very blessed that it's like, and my sleep problems is that it's really hard sometimes, and you're like, no, I have to manage it.
It's. I mean, like, if I didn't, I would sleep like 18 or 20 hours a day, and I wouldn't be able to like work or enjoy friendships or have
and you do podcasts. Such a good job of those things. Look, like you've got this. You are so active.
I try to be. I think that part of the reason is that I spent a couple years of my life like basically sleeping without being diagnosed. I'm like, I always try to make up that time when I can. If somebody invites me to go do something or whatever, even if I'm like, I'm kind of tired, I'm like, well, like if I don't do this, it's
You'll
just
be sleeping.
Yeah, I'd be sleeping. So why not?
Right. I'd rather
do the thing if I can.
Right.
That
makes sense.
It's I don't know. I think it's just something you appreciate, and like
I love that.
For me, like, I think sometimes I wish I could be, I've got some friends that have insomnia and they'll go and they'll write like, they'll write like 20 pages of a script in like one night. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Sometimes I can get it to be focused in that way. More often I end up in random, part of the problem is definitely that I love the feeling of being up at 4 a.m., digging through a part of the internet that I won't even remember the next day. In that it's like, it's just nothing, right? I'm like reading comments on an article from 15 years ago. I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm getting into the interpersonal conflict in a comment section. Like, and I just like kind of zooming in on the internet in the early hours of the morning. Like,
where are you? Are you like Reddit's Am I the Asshole? Like, where are we at?
So, okay, here's what I would do. If I was going through Reddit, Am I the Asshole? I would find the top comment, right, and be like, "Oh man, this person made such a good argument that they're an asshole. Let me see what else they've done. Are they going on this a lot, right?" And then like I'm clicking that, and I'm getting just like a snapshot because people don't lay out their whole life story.
Yeah.
But you might be like, "Oh man, 8 months ago they're talking about a relationship, and then they're posting in our breakup," and you're just like, right, and it's not like I'm getting details, but at 4 a.m. it makes me feel so close to this individual that I can't even picture.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost like one of those connector boards, with like the red lines. It's we're connecting this, and they went to college here, and this was the one they were together with, and then
Yeah. What's weird is I grew up very traditional nerdy guy liking Star Wars and stuff, and it feels like that. It feels like I'm reading the Wikipedia for Chewbacca. It's just like this very particular type of like sifting through information and just being like, interesting.
And I take it you spend a little time on the Chewbacca Wikipedia?
Oh, absolutely. I have for a very long time. I think we grew up with the internet developing, and it gives us a different relationship to it than people that grew up with it always being there.
That's true. And now it's going to be a whole different thing with AI.
So true.
Which will be interesting, to say the least. So you have been working on an album. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I recorded a special, and we're releasing it as an album and a special, and I'm very excited about it.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So when did you record it?
We recorded it in December of the end of last year.
Gotcha.
What is that, 6 months ago now?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. So I was just curious how long, so this whole last several months, have you been like trying to write new stuff? Is that the thing? Is that the race?
Yeah, I mean, definitely just like it's not a period of refining bits so much as like just creating hundreds of things to knock down, see how I like it, and I try to find new jokes and see what I want to talk about and do.
And try weird stuff,
That's
which
right.
is fun. I still remember the Conan episode where you wore Ian wore a dog collar, a shock collar on his Conan set, and gave the button to an audience member and said, "Anything you don't think is funny, you can shock me."
Yeah.
How much did that hurt?
Oh, I mean, it's a shock,
Yeah.
And I had to have the setting up just high enough that I would react enough, I can't have it be too light. That said, it is made for dogs, so it's not like I was
in danger.
No, but it hurt. Yeah, it was,
What made you come up with that?
I just wanted the audience to be able to have a piece in deciding what was funny, what works, what doesn't, and that just really gave them the power, Well,
and it's great because even if something doesn't work, you still get a laugh, which is the best of both worlds.
Boom.
In that way, right?
Love it. Yeah, it helped me.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask the origin of the mustache?
Just grew it out.
Yeah.
Tell me about your origin. Where did you because we started together in Chicago.
Yes, started in Chicago.
But where did you grow up, etc.?
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and I
always forget that.
Yeah.
This is such a fun pillow.
Yeah, you can play with it. Yeah,
I know, I can't help but play with it. I started playing with it, and I was like, wait a second, that feels amazing.
Yes, this is one of my...
Is there a name for this kind of technology?
Is this what AI I think these are sequins. These are just sequins. It's a sequin pillow.
Wow.
They have ones where it'll show a different thing, like it could be like Nick Cage's face, and you go back and forth. But this is just rainbows, and I love it. Because I connected with this pillow on a mushroom trip.
Wow, fun.
Yes. I should name this pillow.
Do things like mushroom trips, does that factor into your relationship with sleep?
Well, oddly enough, the first time I did mushrooms, because I was up later, I didn't have to take my medicine to stay up. Yeah, usually I take a pill to stay awake, and then that wears down. I take another one later in the day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to take a second pill because the mushroom was keeping me up. So in my stoned brain, I was like, oh, this is what my personality is without drugs. And I was like, but you're on mushrooms, Sarah. Because when you've been taking prescribed medication for so long, you kind of wonder where your personality ends and where that begins, and it's kind of hard to figure that out. But because if I didn't take medicine, I just sleep, and that's not really a personality.
Right. Yeah. As great as those long-term dreams can be.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, started in Louisville, Kentucky. I did like a bunch of theater growing up.
Yeah, theater kids, unite.
Yeah,
I love it.
You did theater as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What were some of your favorite roles that you did growing up?
I got to be an Arsenic and Old Lace
classic
comedy role. I got to play the villain, and it was a good time.
That's awesome. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. What about you?
I got cast on a lot of very serious things until I started doing improv and sketch, oddly enough. I was the lead character in The Lottery, where they like stoned. Yeah, where they
Shirley Jackson's The Lottery?
Yes.
You got to be the lead in The Lottery?
Folks,
if you haven't read The Lottery, read it. It is amazing. It's disturbing. I had to read it in high school, and I remember...
I was part of
it lingers.
I was part of an after school theater conservatory that really did some unique plays for kids. So they had kids from
I would say so.
7 to 17, and their whole we did like Titus. They did Rhymers of Eldritch. So they did really experimental things, and their whole thing was they don't want people to come after the show and be like, oh, that was cute. They wanted to actually create real theater. We did Trojan Women.
Wow.
And it was I didn't realize the value of it at the time. It used to be called Walden Theater. Now I think it's Commonwealth Theater.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, run by Charlie Sexton, and some of the great teachers I had when I was there was Barrett Cooper and Alec Valls, and they really did some experimental types of theater for a younger age range, but still let us take it very seriously. So I thought that was very unique, and I didn't realize how unique that was until I started to get older.
Yeah, I know what you mean, where you're going through it and you're like, oh, right, everybody probably gets to do Shirley Jackson's The Lottery in high school. Everybody has something similar to this.
And the way they ended it is they had everyone holding the rocks, and then they played Paint It Black as the
the lights went down.
Yeah. So,
whoa.
But they did a lot of stuff like that. So not as many happy-go-lucky musicals or things like that, but they did it in professional spaces throughout Louisville, Kentucky, and it's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so I was very lucky to have that, and then I went to theater school, which was a Meisner school, so it was super serious. I went to NIU.
Ooh, what did it mean that I'm familiar with Meisner? I know the approach. What made it a Meisner school?
Because Catherine Gately was the lead teacher, and she was taught directly from Meisner. She was also the one that taught James Gandolfini.
Wow,
and so she was
cool.
She's very...
Would she, in the middle of class, say, when I was working with James? Would she say things
no,
like that?
she actually... No, she would not. She mentioned it occasionally.
I've never seen an acting teacher not do things like that. So all respect, I have to believe that at least once a semester. And to be frank, if I helped James Gandolfini in one workshop that he hated, for the rest of my life I would be saying, when I was working with James.
No, she taught him for 2 years. We watched the inside.
I believe it.
We watched his Inside the Actor Studio. He mentions Catherine Gately, and he
so
attributed
cool.
a lot of his career to her.
That's cool.
Meisner also, back when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago, but the whole thing is it was a bit more intense. I'm not sure if they would let it be this intense, because someone would always at least punch a hole in the wall at some point during acting class. You get really
in
into
character
it.
or
in character.
Wow, interesting.
There was stuff like that always kind of happened, and I'm not sure if theater school's quite the same now, because movement class, you're kind of just all over each other. It's very different now. I'm not sure if theater school's still like that, or if it's had a lot of adjustments, because there's a lot that's happened last
The more things change, the more they stay the same. If we're asking if theater kids are still managing to be horny in movement class, I'm gonna guess yes. I'm gonna guess that will, as long as there is movement class, there will be kids that identify as some version of, hi, I'm a theater kid, and also they're horny.
So what type of theater kid were you?
Not the kind that got to take movement class. I liked being a funny guy, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, acting was so exciting to me. I was like, I don't know how one would even try to become an actor, but I could try to figure out how to become a stand-up comedian in a way that made more sense to me.
Oh, so you found stand-up through acting.
I loved performance, right? And so I knew that I didn't sing and dance, and that doesn't leave much, right? So like I'm already like, okay, ruled those out pretty quickly.
Okay.
So
you're like, okay, can't, yeah.
Right? Acting is great, but it's harder. I would rather be going to open mics than auditions, right? Open mics I can have more control over. It's harder with an audition. Other people manage to make it work, and it just fits their approach better. For me, I love stand-up and getting to write and perform the thing.
Yeah.
Both.
Have complete control over it.
Yeah, that's fun for me. Yeah.
So did you start after school? Like, when did you start?
Yeah,
How old were you?
When I was in high school, I was in theater, and I would jump on opportunities to perform before then, but there weren't a lot. High school, we would do 2 plays a year, and it was the most exciting thing in the world, you know? Because that's the thing. I mean, the reason that theater kids are horny in movement class is because they've finally found each other.
Yeah, we're like, oh, we like the same things. We both understand our references. It's amazing.
Right.
Like,
right.
it's...
Right. And it's just a very exciting time for those folks.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I think, being a teenager or early 20s is just like a very exciting time for like so much change. So many things are happening.
Everything,
Yeah.
You're figuring out, you're like, oh man, I'm in the world for the first time. It's just like Rent,
Oh, God. Yeah. It's and the thing is that you also don't realize, you don't know what you don't know. And so you're just figuring it out. You're figuring out how to be a person, how to communicate, how to have relationships and friendships and everything. And it's, it's an interesting time. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was your high school experience, and then college was the Meisner School.
Meisner School, and I was doing, so I discovered clowning, and I've always done mask work, but clowning I discovered, and that was really fun. And then I started doing improv because I was like, oh, I can just start taking improv classes in the city. So I would go take the train in and like take classes and do improv. Started improv at IO and Annoyance, and then I did Second City. Kind of did that throughout on the one day off where we didn't have rehearsal on Sundays.
Wow.
And
Dedicated, love it.
And then moved to Chicago, and I was in a couple plays. I was in this one play about King Arthur that was called The Pendragon, that was entirely an iambic pentameter.
Whoa.
Yes.
Good on you for a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I had a small role, so it was fine. But and I didn't write the thing, but like that sort of stuff. And then I just started getting cast in more like sketch and improv groups, and I was like, oh, this is fun. We only have to have 3 hours of rehearsal, and I can perform. And it was like all of that. And then eventually, I didn't want to have to rely on 8 people's schedule to perform, and so I looked up the closest open mic, went to Merkel's on a January in 2014. And that was the first open mic I ever did, and I kept doing it. I liked it more than I thought, and I kept doing it.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember, I don't remember, 'cause when you start seeing comedians around the scene, it's like you kind of start realizing, wait, I've seen them like 5 times in the last week.
Yeah.
And then so it's hard to think of when you've met someone.
Oh,
exactly,
no, absolutely. I mean, because in stand-up, we come across so many different people, have so many little conversations, and for me, it is so hard for me to remember faces and names sometimes. It takes me a couple different times, or it takes me like, hey, we're having an actual 10-minute conversation, which takes a while to get to that point because you're going in between shows, people are running around.
Right. We're salmon swimming upstream.
Yeah, so people are busy, and that's how it is. But it takes a little bit till you realize, and that's with most of my stand-up friends. I don't remember if I met you at this mic or this show, or was that the first time. Like usually, I remember the first time we hang out, but not like the first time, But and for you. Oh, what were you?
So you have done all of that, I want to talk about your sleep show that you're working on.
Oh, okay, sure.
How is that developing? You have all this experience with mask work, with Meisner. You've done the sketch, you've done the improv, you've done the stand-up. Now you're throwing it all against the wall at once and doing jokes about sleep and etc. Across the pond. What's happening?
Well, so Sleeping with Sarah is a show I've been developing. So it's probably a show I've been like waiting to write like probably my whole life, and now I just have the confidence and ability and voice to do it. I've had jokes about narcolepsy in my stand-up, but to be true to stand-up, it's like you want 15 seconds of laughter for every 45 seconds of material, and while it can work in that way, I think it's too rushed and you don't get to go deeper into it. So with the solo show, I'm trying to go deeper into it and be able to talk more deeply about not just narcolepsy, but invisible disabilities, misconceptions people have, misdiagnosis, dealing with medications and insurance and like all these other issues that happen just when you have an invisible disability. Yeah. And so kind of going through that, but funny, obviously, and personal stories about how it took me a while to actually get to where I fully accepted it as a person, which didn't really start until I started doing stand-up and talking about it on stage and had all these people that could embrace me that are like, oh, wait, you've got narcolepsy. Talk about that on stage. That's awesome. That's comedy gold, and people that were really curious about it and people that shared their other shit, like talking about whether they were alcoholics or had ADHD or had, if they were Asperger's or whatever they might have.
These are what we're calling invisible illnesses.
Yeah.
Things that at a glance, you, if someone is in a wheelchair, you see that and you're like, oh, I understand some things about how this person is experiencing the world that I'm obviously going to accommodate.
Yeah.
And someone doesn't understand that you have narcolepsy and that's why right after you parked, you needed to take just a tiny nap, and so they knock, right?
Yeah, and so, but I think that's the same with a lot of people. A lot of people go through things or take medications or, might be a little bit more awkward or talk a little fast, and people don't know what they're going through or don't know the side effects of the medications people go through. And if you are like able-bodied appearing, there's a lot of assumptions being made. Like for me, it's laziness is kind of what the assumption is. If you sleep, you're lazy, and so that is something I think is really important because I think we've done a lot better job of getting more disabilities on camera, on screen, but I think invisible disabilities are still not as much. But at least we've gotten past like the early aughts of where it was just a punchline, so that's a little better.
Fair enough.
but yeah, so that's kind of for me. I think that's kind of the big goals of it is just kind of bring awareness. In an entertaining way, not just of my story, but as invisible disabilities as a whole.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And it's silly. It's got some clowning elements. I play a bunch of different characters.
Nice.
It's fun.
How are you developing it? Are you able to, when you're trying to work out a particular piece, are you doing that 10-minute piece or are you doing the whole show?
There are certain... I've been particular about the mics and stuff I'm going to in LA because LA is not like Chicago where you can just do a weird thing at any place. Right. So I'm trying to find those spaces as well to do that. I'm going to do a little mini preview before I head out to Edinburgh, kind of quieter one. And then I have a director that's been working with me as well, a theater director, because it is theater. So I've been having somebody else work with me on that. And I'm going to do a little preview show before I go to Edinburgh for that. And kind of get an idea. So that's kind of the plan.
That is so exciting.
How did you go about, for your album, was it just taking your favorite things of the last decade or?
Yeah, I love coming out of theater. I love thinking about how to open, how to close, how to shift the energy in the middle. And I love that kind of structural things that I like to put in as I'm doing an hour at any point, right? And trying to slowly smooth that out. And so for me, this was an hour of, hopefully it feels cohesive, right? Hopefully does have a beginning, middle, and end, even though it is a little abstract and weird,
But that's you. I think that fits. Yeah. And I don't think you take offense to the word weird. I definitely don't.
No, no, definitely not. Wow, that's excellent. Thank you so much for asking me about that.
Yeah, no, always curious. Like I said, that's a big feat to get to that point where you're like, oh, I'm recording an album. And then you're like, is there an immediately panic? Oh, I need to have a whole new hour. Or
Yeah, so that is interesting. I see what you're saying. As you're coming up, that is exactly what you hear. You talk to people experiencing that. They've just recorded an hour, and now the thing that they've spent a decade on, they need to start doing something they've been working on for a couple of months, and it's intimidating and it's hard. And a second hour can be really, really tough in that way. Over quarantine, I wrote a bunch of material that I couldn't be performing, and went hard on the type of research that I'm saying that I like to, and wrote a bunch about Theodore Roosevelt, and kind of tried to dig deep into that and find just interesting, odd things about him. It's like I was going through his Reddit comment history. Got it.
Yeah. If Theodore Roosevelt had a Reddit, what would it look like? Yeah.
Oh, man. It would be a little obnoxious. He would be one of the people on social media that you absolutely agreed with and absolutely were a little tired of hearing from.
You're like, okay, we get it. It's like the person in the class that's always right, but always takes 5 minutes to answer.
Right, yeah. And then, when it's time for the group project, it's like, honestly, it would not have gotten done without that person. Thank God. And also, they're just a little annoying. They just are. I'm so sorry. Love them, but oh God.
Yeah. I think that would be fun to kind of just explore the annoying people in history.
Yeah.
Just to explore that. Let's just explore all the annoying.
I love that. The annoying people of history. Because that's such a fun was Catherine the Great annoying? Let's get to the bottom of it. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of a fun idea. Just did people find Edgar Allan Poe too mopey? It's dude, you complain all the time. Yeah. Will you just stop already? We get it.
Oh man, that's so fun. Wow.
I love history. I'm a nerd, but I love learning about history. I think that's why I love traveling, just to be able to experience a place that's been around a long time. And,
yeah. Here's a fun game that you can do the next time that your narcolepsy leaves you awake at 4 a.m. somehow. Mm-hmm. When you're awake at 4 a.m., you can go to the New York Times archive. And even if you don't have a subscription to the New York Times, public libraries can give you access to this archive very easily, regardless of where you live. So you go to the archive and you just start typing stuff in and filter earliest to latest. So if you want to know the first time that the New York Times is talking about the Eiffel Tower, you can, right? You can type in stand-up comedy. What year do you think stand-up comedy? Ooh. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
because comedy is around for a long time.
But the thing is, when it's referred to as stand-up, when it was actually published in papers, because it's it could have been Lenny Bruce arrested for doing stand-up comedy.
Right.
When is that first article here, right?
Right.
That is really interesting.
And so then from there, I'll be like, wait, when is let me see the arc of the New York Times talking about Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
Because I bet the first time he comes up, it's probably oh man, this guy's kind of cool, to oh, this guy's getting kind of edgy, to oh, we condemn the man who says a bad word. But you kind of get to see this weird arc, and regardless of what you're interested in, there's a version of that that's fun with the New York Times archive.
Very fun. There's one other little thing I do want to ask, because
Please.
You did have a very unique wedding.
Yes, I
during
did.
The pandemic.
Yeah.
So you won a wedding.
Yes. Yeah. A friend entered us in a contest, and we won a wedding on Instagram. My wife and I were contacted by a venue that was kind of trying to be oh, we're coming out of COVID and we want to show off our vendors, right? We want to show the people that make cakes and bands. We kind of want a big party that says, hey, if you want to have a wedding, here is what that's what this could look like here. And that meant that what they needed was a nice couple to have at the center of it. And it turns out that we were not going to get a 10-piece band any other way.
That's nice.
And the thing is this is an LA band, which is to say these are people that are recording artists and professional, incredible musicians. So these are like some of the best wedding cover bands in the world, right?
Yeah.
And they are so well organized. Again, we never would have been able to afford anything like this, but this is like they're showing their top tier version, right? So they have several types of bands coming in, and they'll have like a horn section come in for an hour, and then they'll come back and do like, okay, it's time for the 80s hour, and then they're just doing covers. It was wild.
That's amazing.
Surreal.
So you won a wedding so it can happen, guys. So sometimes people do give away things and you can win it.
I'll say this, free stuff can definitely yield great, but it does become its own job.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you have to decide how much you want to
that's fair.
dive into it. That's the fortune cookie wisdom from Ian Abramson.
I like that. The fortune cookie wisdom, that sounds fun. Just be like, here's a cookie, and read whatever the wisdom you have.
Yeah.
Don't even read what's on it. Just make it up.
That would be great. If I have kids, I'll be like, this says you have to go to bed right now.
When I was in second grade for a project, my mom cooked, we made fortune cookies, and she made custom little things.
Oh,
and but one of them said, you'll lose a tooth soon, and that's the one that my teacher got. Because in second grade,
that's
kids,
fun, right? You thought that was that's like a good
one for a
like,
kid.
I sure hope I don't lose a
not.
tooth. This is a much more serious thing.
Well, we're winding down the podcast, and I always ask people near the end, what are your dreams for the future?
Ooh, I love that. I will give an uncharacteristically straight answer. That's why I paused. I was like, am I about to go sincere? I hate going sincere. I'm in the middle of a weight loss journey, up and down, right? And you have to kind of motivate yourself in different ways, right? Because you don't want to just fetishize being skinny. Mm-hmm. You don't want that to be the fantasy, the dream. So you have to what I'm finding for me is that it helps to think more specifically what that means. And for me, I'm excited to learn how to do better pratfalls, and I'm excited to do some like low-level stunt kind of stuff that, like, oh man, my dream is to stand on a second-story building, which is high, but not absurdly high, and have just a ton of cardboard boxes that I can fully leap into. Enough cardboard boxes that I'm confident I won't get seriously hurt. I might get bruised,
Yeah.
But I would only want to do that in a safe way.
Yeah.
And maybe there isn't a safe way, but you get the idea of figuring out things like that would be really fun to me. And that is my dream that I have laid out for myself to kind of keep me going with my up and down journey of trying to battle the American obesity problem.
I love that. That's a very fun, very specific, to jump out of a second-story window and fall in a safe way.
Right?
And hopefully get it on camera, because if you're going to do that, you might as well film it, right?
I didn't consider that. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like, oh, no, I'm just going to do it and tell people I did it, and they're just going to believe me. Like, Ian, you jumped out of a two-story way.
I mean, the thing is like, if you're doing that, you're working up to it, and you're figuring out different pieces of it. Anyway, but I'm glad that I got to say that, and I don't know that I would have said that in another context. So clearly this is a comfy environment that you have fully curated.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And we are winding down the podcast. So if you want to tell everyone where they can find you and where they can find your album and your special, that would be awesome. So you can feel free.
Yes. So on Instagram, I am at Ian Abramsons. That's my name with an S, as if there's two of me, because the other one was already taken. So I figured, why not make it clear that I'm in that same, you get it. Okay. Socials like that are probably the best way to keep up with me. I have stuff on YouTube that you can find, and you can find a trailer for the special on YouTube that will direct you to it.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being part of the podcast, and we always end by saying good night. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to Sleeping with Sarah, where I slept with Ian Abramson. You can follow Ian on Twitter and TikTok at Ian Abramson, and on Instagram at Ian Abramsons, plural. And be sure to check out his website, ianabramson.com. You can catch me performing all August at the Edinburgh Fringe Fest with my show, Awake and Narcoleptic. If you like the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Follow at Sleeping with Sarah on TikTok and YouTube, and at Sleeping with Sarah Pod on Instagram. Thanks to Josh Bryant for the music. Big shout out to Wolf Ramirez and the team at Jam in the Van. Please follow at Jam in the Van and check out their other podcasts and other live shows. I'll be releasing a new podcast each week, so tune in to find out who I have in bed with me next. If you want to find out more about me, go to sleepysarah.com or follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Sarah Albritton and TikTok at Sarah Albritton Comedy. Until next time, good night.
Sleeping